Welcome, everybody, to the first episode of 2023 for Into the Storm podcast. I have Trisha and Trey over here, so I'm saying that because in case Trisha says something that everybody will know who it is, Trisha Madrid. She's part of our family at Bison Ventures, and we are sponsored by VIP Mortgage, Bison Ventures, Informed Mortgage Lending, and my good friends at Muscular Moving Men. They're our newest sponsor. So we're throwing that out there. I threw that on everybody. Nobody knew that besides me.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
But before we get into it, I just want everybody to please go to our YouTube page, Into the Storm, and like and subscribe. We need some viewers to keep this thing rolling. And then please go to all our social media platforms, obviously Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, everything. I'm hearing some stuff over there. Okay. Yeah. And anyways, and go on to those, check out the episodes, and like and comment on anything you do. Share the ones that you like to your friends and all that good stuff. So today we have, I was going to say from the brokerage that you're at, but that would make that first. So I'm going to say Jenn Newman, who happens to work at the Brokery, which is one of our best partners, if not, one of our best partners we have.
For sure.
We have a lot of great partners, so everybody out there, don't get jealous.
That's right.
So Jenn has been with the Brokery now for how long?
It was November of 2019.
2019, okay. And I'm going to just say this. She's been in the business since 2017, but before we get into this world, we're going to talk a little bit about how you got to where you're at now.
Yeah.
Because she has a very interesting story. I'm looking at you saying she. You have a very interesting story. And for me, going through the notes and knowing you, the music part to me is really cool.
Love
and
that.
So she's a classically trained singer. So get into that a little bit. So where did you start singing? When did you start singing? Where are you from, first of all?
Yeah, absolutely. So originally from Phoenix. So I can count myself a native, but then when I was 8 years old, we relocated. My dad was relocated to Memphis, Tennessee, and that's where I stayed. I graduated high school there, and then ended up coming back to Arizona, really not even intentionally. It wasn't about I need to go back to Arizona. It was more about coming here for Conservatory. So that brought me back to ASU, and Arizona's that place.
Explain Conservatory for everybody who doesn't know what that is.
So Conservatory in this context is all about music. And I started singing when I was a tiny girl. My mom says that I sang before I spoke. And I don't remember a life without music. So sincerely, I don't know.
Right.
I just feel like I've always sung. But as anyone who's going through a classically trained program, so I did all the classical things growing up. I took my piano lessons. I had a voice teacher and did all the vocal competitions through high school. And then when I went to college, I was looking for a conservatory environment, which is essentially a bubble. It's a bubble where everything that's taught there is driven towards that craft.
Right.
And so for me personally, that meant that I was focused on vocal performance.
And that was at ASU?
That was at ASU.
Who would have known? ASU was a place where people would go for that.
Yeah.
So were you, like you said, you're in a bubble, so you didn't really have like a true college life, so to speak?
I love that question. Fair question. Yeah. You put a bunch of theater people together, you have a whole different kind of college experience. But for me personally, I was not a party girl in the sense of all the typical ASU kind of party ways, because I was always performing. And for me personally, that meant that if I was out, hooting and hollering, that I was going to do some sort of, it was not going to be good for my voice.
Right.
So in many ways, that was just kind of the compass, was always knowing.
So you were just super disciplined.
I was super disciplined in my own way.
Yeah.
My eyes were on the prize when it came to music, for
reminds
sure.
me of a collegiate athlete. It was almost like a job in a sense, right? Because you were on a full ride, so you were kind of obligated to, they made an investment in you.
They did. And I was very fortunate that I got to go to ASU under those terms. They literally paid my way to perform. I mean, it really was a dream come true. And from that discipline standpoint, yes, when you are, especially when you're doing any sort of classical, I don't want to diminish anything else, but in that kind of environment, there's such a focus on not only the instrument itself, but you're in musical theory, you're in music history, you're in music performance, you're in, diction classes when you're a classical singer. So we were always working toward that goal. So it did create a set of disciplines because that's the way you learned, and you had to grow into your voice. So you were constantly working those muscles to be able to do what the end goal really was. Yeah.
So do you think that like living in Memphis was a huge help for you because it's such a musical city?
What's interesting, I don't think it was until I was an adult that I really understood and could appreciate the other musical influences of Memphis, which obviously are blues, jazz, country. Yeah. For me, growing up in the South, the real influence was gospel music. So I was that church kid. I was in church. That's what kids in the South do. You go to church multiple times a week. And because I was singing, I was involved in choir, and I was involved in gospel choir, and I was always having that influence. That was a significant influence on me musically, was that. In fact, frankly, I wanted to go into like Christian contemporary music. I wanted to be the next Sandy Patty, which, it's just hysterical to think of now, but it kept me super focused. And I was the girl that was raised naive as can be, thinking that Broadway was just a single building in New York City. I didn't realize it was a genre, if you will. So naive. And so when I went to college, I went to just study voice. I didn't really understand the magnitude of all these other options that I had. And that was a huge place of discovery for me, was my undergrad.
So you would think that a lot of people would do like theater if you're like, but I guess classically trained is more like opera, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it definitely has that background. I learned that opera is such a specific genre. It is, and it takes a special person to do it. And what I learned is, although I can sing operatically, I don't consider myself an opera singer because I didn't have the discipline to learn multiple languages and to constantly be translating in my head what I'm singing versus what I'm, what does this text mean? I loved the pomp and circumstance of it. I had fun with it, but I knew at the end of my undergrad, I didn't have what it took to really be an opera singer. The chops, yes, but I didn't have the discipline for it. I loved being able to communicate with an audience, knowing what I was, being invested in that text and that connection. And I discovered through all those years of training that I just loved to sing the good old American songbook. Like even what? like I love Cole Porter and Rodgers and Hammerstein and listening to like those standards. Like if you think about the Rat Pack and Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr., that music lights me up inside. Like that is just, and that was what I got to do a lot. And I found a really strong connection to that music, and my voice was able to do it. And so I did it, and I loved it. That's and awesome. I still sing classically. Yeah. But to hire me to go in residency and to sing, an entire opera in another language and all that entailed, I didn't have a passion for that. Right. My husband had a passion for that. I didn't have a passion for that.
He was a singer too? Or
yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Jeez. Christmas around your house would be awesome.
It's very loud.
A lot of caroling.
Yes, loud.
So, okay. So if you got a full ride to go to ASU to sing, okay, so if someone gets a full ride to go, say, play football there, right? They go there because there's people that come watch, and they have games every week.
Sure.
So did you have like concerts and stuff that for the school that people came to?
That's a great question. So when I got to ASU my freshman year, I really was on the vocal performance track. And at that time, that degree program was structured as musical theater and then vocal performance. And the musical theater, those kids actually had the opportunity to do both opera and musical theater. It was a hybrid program. So got to school, kind of started to get my feet wet, and realized that I really wanted to audition for those shows. I was really interested in that. And so my first year was really just studying voice And then it was time to do shows. And that was the, if you will, the public-facing component of what we did. The School of Music produced 4 large-scale productions every year. And so starting my sophomore year until I ended up doing, I think I did 14 shows at ASU. And so, yeah, those were public-facing. People bought tickets and came.
Gotcha.
And that was that piece. It wasn't a place to be scouted, if you will. It wasn't it wasn't from that perspective, but it really was just about learning the craft and doing the production. It was awesome.
So how competitive was that within within ASU alone?
Yeah.
So you had the new freshmen come in and you're like, bitch.
Totally.
Was it
totally. It was like, let's see if they've got the chops. Yeah. Oh yeah, it was. It was very competitive. And I think through that experience, I realized that when you know what you can do well, you just lean into that.
Yeah.
And I challenged myself many times over to do things that were outside my comfort zone. And I learned a lot from that, but I quickly discovered what I was strong and skilled at. And so I came at it from a place of, if it's right for me, I'm going to get it. And if it's not, then I won't.
Right.
But you put a bunch of theater kids. Everybody's competitive for sure. Yeah.
So when you graduate ASU, what was the next step? What you're okay, my career is going to be what?
My whole goal was to be able to be singing professionally. And at that time when I graduated from ASU, I knew the next step was New York City. More so because moving to New York.
Because of Broadway.
Well, that's everybody, right. But, of the one building. Yeah, the one building on the street. That was a logical step. But I knew, I had discovered throughout my education that one of the unique qualities about my voice was that I could sing opera and musical theater. And at one point I had a professor say to me, you're going to have to choose. You cannot do both. And that really did not resonate with me. I was like, I can. I really think I can. I knew I wouldn't be a Broadway singer and then go to the Met and sing opera. It wasn't from that perspective, but I felt like I could sing a lot of different types of music. And so right out of college, I got hired to sing a symphony concert and realized, I really love this. I get to be on stage. I get to be with that live orchestra. It's all the trimmings of what I've been doing this whole time, but I get to be me. I get to truly just be Jenn Newman, at the time Jen Rydell. I got to be me, and there was something really special about that. I don't want to say genre. It wasn't. It was just it was a very specific thing that I felt so connected to, and so that whet my appetite. When we went to New York, it was more about you move to New York so you can get a job elsewhere. It's the street cred of being in New York City, and
so
during that
go,
time,
wait tables and then try to build your career.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
I knew I'd be terrible at that. I knew I'd be absolutely terrible at that, and so I made a promise to myself that I needed the stability of income, so I always was going to work in some sort of business capacity. And so we went there, and I was an administrative assistant and was auditioning for things, but the work that I was getting was symphony work. And I would fly back wherever. You're there for a few days. You're not there for 2 months. You're there for a few days. And I really loved it. And that was kind of at the onset of what became my bread and butter, which was doing symphony pops concerts. And I loved it. That was the perfect vehicle. I got to do both.
Right.
First half, they'd haul me out and sing classical, and then we'd have intermission and change my clothes and come out, and then we would do very contemporary pieces, and it was fun.
Trisha?
So a big, sorry, I'm behind the monitor.
Yeah.
I don't want to interrupt. So the community that you built while you were at ASU, I think is very unusual. It's amazing that you guys are all still super tight decades later. Yeah. Can you speak to that a little bit? And is that where you met Jim?
Yes.
Right.
So there is something. For example, anybody that's in theater and you're in that music environment, that becomes your fraternity, that becomes your sorority. Mm-hmm. It is a family, and when I was there, there's a group of us that, we just became super close, but then we all ended up migrating to New York. And when that happened, when Jim and I did meet my husband Jim at ASU. I was finishing my undergrad. He was starting his master's in opera performance, and we met cliche in a show. I mean, it was as cliche as it gets, like really, truly cliche.
Fame.
Oh, totally. And when we moved to New York City, our friends were there, and it's just like any other network, right? We were all connected. They knew we were coming, and one thing led to another. And it ended up being that on our floor in our New York City building, there was myself and Jim. In our apartment next door were 3 friends that had a 3-bedroom apartment, of which are ASU alum, and now my not only best friends but colleagues, Brad and JP. And then we had our friends diagonal from us. They were also a newly married couple from ASU. And then my best friend Ann lived across the hall. So we were like an episode of Friends.
Yeah.
When I say that we left our doors open, we literally came in and out all the time. I mean, it was a family. That
sounds so fun.
We had a blast.
Especially in New York.
Oh, absolutely. And that was our family. And I think that connection was because we all lived together? We had it before, but living on that floor for those years, that was an extraordinary experience, but then that's also carried with us all these years later. I mean, that was when we moved there the first time. That was in 2002. Right. And we almost all of us, except for one, we've all migrated back here, which is also interesting. We kind of move as a pack. So
right.
And how cool is it that you now have Brad and JP? I mean, you recruited them, right?
Yeah.
So that didn't stop in New York. I mean, you see and talk to them arguably daily.
Absolutely. I mean, they're my family. You know, Brad and I in particular, I've known Brad longer than I've known my husband. And we have weathered every life event from the time I was 18 years old until now. We've weathered all the events and, confided in each other over all of these years about the life stuff, you know, and changes of careers and changes of course and what are we going to do next. And, I've lived, I think in some respects, a lot of life. And so to have friends like that can just be there for you and relate and understand and know you at your core, right? They know you, they've known you your entire adult life. That's really sacred. So now to get to partner together at the Brokery and to do that is really, it's sacred. And I know it doesn't happen every day, but it's pretty fantastic.
So what brought you back from New York, or brought you back to Arizona then after New York?
So we were there for 2 years. I got pregnant with our daughter. Jim was like, we cannot raise a child here. I mean, it was funny.
Brad's like, yes, you can.
Yeah, totally. And Brad lived next door, so he loves to tell that story that he was, he clearly knew that we were pregnant, right? So we laugh about that time. In typical Newman style, we probably did, no pun intended, threw the baby away with the bathwater. We really could have stayed there and just gotten another apartment. Yeah. It was the apartment that needed to be changed, maybe not a relocation back.
Right.
So we traversed back to Arizona, and we came back in 2004 and built a life here. And we knew that we could kind of get off the treadmill of the city and come back to Arizona, buy a house, do the things that people do when they have babies, right? And
could you still do your careers though?
I still sang. Okay. In fact, I really had my first big professional break when Lila was a baby. She was born in the summer, and that Christmas I did a big Christmas concert that really solidified that I was going to continue to do both things. I was still going to get to sing the way I wanted to and be able to do that. And that actually was the first big concert that I did that. So I kept performing and would travel. Jim kept performing. We realized though we had this little human that maybe we didn't want to always be traveling around. And so we got settled and kind of rolled up our sleeves and said, okay, this is where we're going to build our life. And got into, built our second home, and we were ready to let's keep growing our family, and we're here to stay. And then the crash happened. Yeah. And Jim was working in construction, and I was home with our daughter. And it was a brutal time. We lost everything during that time. And so here we were, unemployed, with a kid, in our dream home, with family across the street, friends from New York, built the house next door.
This is 2008?
This was 2008. Yeah. And Jim made it through several rounds of layoffs with his builder, and then it happened. And Jim was unemployed for about 18 months. I was still singing. And we were in that place where, what are we going to do? Like, we probably applied for every job known to man. There was nothing we wouldn't do, but it was at that time when this city just really, that was a brutal time. And so Brad was still in New York and said, you can come stay here. If you need to bounce back and forth, you can stay with us. And that was the decision, was let's consider that. And one thing led to another, and we got an offer to go back. And so I left Jim and Lila and said, I'll be back when I have a job and an apartment. I'm going to go figure it out. And the rest was history. We were there for 8 years after that.
Oh, wow.
And we rebuilt our life there. And with a very different intention than the first time that we went. Now things are different, right? The stakes are higher. We have a child.
Yeah.
We've just come through a horrific time. And I think, who doesn't move to New York City after you've lost everything to rebuild? It's such a cheap place to live, right? Such a logical, right? Like, so logical. But I knew one thing it had for it that I trusted in was that I knew I would get a job there. I knew I would. And we got back. I did start working there. And then Jim and Lila followed a couple months later. I picked him up. We made home there, and then Jim was employed within 3 weeks. So it was like
Well, you guys said you got a job, and Jim was employed. So it's not like you get like a job, you do that job, and then you go look for another job, like an acting, like a gig.
Gigs.
It's like literally like it's like a every day or 5 days a week.
Totally fair. That's an important point. I was always working in business. I was always in an assistant role all through that time. And Jim was the same way. We both wanted to make sure that we had health insurance. Obviously, we wanted to make sure that we had, a steady income. So we were doing ancillary gigs on the side.
Gotcha.
And we were very frank and candid about it with our employers. They knew.
Yeah.
Far more acceptable in New York City. It's expected there versus being here. And I kept singing for many years. I would go do my gigs and take vacation, go run and do a gig and come back.
That's awesome. So when you guys, in 2016, you moved back here then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we had been there. Lila was getting ready to go to middle school. She kept coming out to Arizona in the summer to visit my folks. And that summer of 2016, she came back and was just not the same. And we had a conversation with her, like, what would it look like if we moved back to Arizona, if we went? Because she always said, you'll never leave New York.
Yeah.
And we said, well, what if we would? And that day she sat in the living room and just started crying and said, that would be amazing. And for Jim and I, that was it. We were like, we're going to go. And so we decided we'd either go when she went into 7th grade or 9th grade. And we were like, let's move her at a logical time. Yeah. And, sometimes you put those intentions out there and then things just line up very quickly. And that's exactly what happened. And so we moved back in the summer of 2016.
All right. So now we're going to get into the real estate side of things.
Yes.
So you got into the real estate then in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So was it your first job when you got back?
No.
Okay.
I came back. When I left my corporate job, I had a career, ended up growing and moving up the ladder in advertising in New York City, and walked away in December of 2015 and thought, I really feel this pull to do I want to be in business for myself. I had been exposed to a network marketing situation that I thought, well, that would be interesting, but I didn't identify with the product that was being sold, but I certainly identified with the concept of building a business. And so that year of 2016, I was trying to do that, and I knew it wasn't for me. And so, but now I've gotten a glimpse of it, right?
Yeah.
And so there was no going back to corporate. And I call that year of 2016 the year of the diaper. Like, I feel like I sat in a diaper all year going, I really want to change this, but I don't know what to do. And that was just that feeling. And I sat in that. I really can't express that feeling of that entire year thinking, at that point, I'm almost 40 years old. I know there's something more for me that I'm supposed to do, but I don't know what that is. And I sat in that space of just questioning. And a dear friend of mine said, well, aside from singing, what do you enjoy in your free time? And I said, I love all things home. I love home. I love staging. I love decorating. I love seeing people in their home. I love creating spaces. I love real estate. She said, I think that's a clue.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, the real estate market and our family didn't get along so well in 2008. So I don't even know what the market's like here at this point. And she was able to introduce me to a friend of hers who's a broker owner of a boutique firm. And she said, I really think you're going to connect with her. She's a mom. She's a creative. She transitioned into real estate. They now own their own brokerage. I think you should meet with her. And I did. And that was what changed everything.
Trisha?
So the concept of home, this is really a hard setup with the monitor between us.
Why is it like this?
I don't know. Well, Trey can see all of the cameras.
Why can't you sit over there?
I can. I'll move a lot because I have that tripod right here that I'm trying to work with. Okay. But anyway, so I got to move the camera. So the concept of home, it's something I hear you talk about a lot, right? I mean, it's one of, I think, your big differentiators as an agent. Instead of it just being real estate, like property, right? It's a place to build a life.
Yep.
Do you think that having gone through that crash and losing your home made the concept of home that much more important to you when you actually went to sell real estate?
Hands down. I mean, there is something about understanding where you can be seen and heard and feel safe. And that to me is what home is. So I also knew that it didn't matter where that was. What I learned when we lost our home was that we had done all the right things. We did all the right things to have that family home that we were going to stay in. And so to watch that go away it's a very shameful process. At least it was for us. It was horrible. And I remember thinking, I can make home anywhere we are. All that matters is that Jim and Lila and I are together, and I will figure it out. But I realized when we got our apartment, because I was sleeping on my best friend's couch in New York City. Like, I was literally sleeping on the couch trying to find a job. I mean, it was just humble pie times 10. And I realized when we got the keys to that apartment, that's when I realized, you know what? This is a sacred space, and I will never take home for granted again. And that was a pivotal time. So to answer, your question, Trisha, I think that of course it is. And I also understand the fear of not knowing if it's going to come together. So when I'm with my clients, if they're stressed about their loan or they're, stressed about how they're going to get their down payment together, especially when I'm working with first-time buyers, I know what that feels like. Yeah. And so, that to me, home is that. A house is a commodity. I don't look at real estate as a commodity. I look at it as a true, it's a sanctuary for people.
So I have a quote, that post that I love, that I talk about all the time, working with your first-time home buyers. But here's a little snippet. You know how much I believe that everyone deserves a place to call home. That sacred place to feel safe, loved, and to start new chapters. When I read that, I got like chills. That was probably like a year and a half ago. I don't know when you posted that, but
almost 3 years ago now.
Wow,
can you believe
it
that?
was just like so powerful because typically you see a lot of just listed, open house this weekend, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Market updates and so forth. It was just like a breath of fresh air, and that tends to be your norm, right? Where a just listed or just sold is not the usual Jen post. You might throw something in there like on your story, right? But if you look at your feed, it's not a bunch of real estate. And I think that has always been what has impressed me, because a lot of people they're not brave enough to kind of take the leap and be vulnerable and show the human side of that real estate agent, right? Not just the real. And I'm the first to admit that I'm super guilty of this myself, because I haven't taken that leap. I'm much more comfortable sitting behind the camera, right? And writing the posts and posting, but not actually participating. And so I applaud you for that, because I think that I didn't know you that well when that post came out. And I was like, damn, this is different. And you could tell the love and the pride you had for your clients who went through 14 months or whatever it was to find that home. You felt it. I mean, you're a very good writer as well, but it was the subject matter, and you didn't make that about like, oh, look at me, I'm so good, I sold a house. You made it all about them, their story.
Isn't that the point? I mean, it is all about them, right?
It should be.
I wouldn't have what I have today if it weren't for my clients. I mean, I get to do what I do every day because of them. So it's not about me. I mean, that is fundamentally how I feel. And so that piece of self-promotion.
It is the opposite of probably most, right? Because everybody touts their success, their numbers, how great they are, but they don't really talk about. So I love all my clients. Thanks. I just sold $9 million this month. I'm fucking awesome. Hey, just real quick though, just because you're gonna watch this, while you were reading that poem, I was yawning, or not poem, the post. So when I wasn't yawning. I wasn't yawning because of the post. I was yawning because I got up really early, and I know you're gonna look back at this and be like, "Why the fuck was he yawning?" So I'm just throwing it out there.
We'll drop the post in right there, so we won't even see you yawn.
There it is.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So I didn't have to be, up front.
That's right. I love it.
Okay, so you went to the Brokery then in what year? 19?
It was 2019.
2019. Okay, and how'd you find those guys?
I did a cross sale with an agent who's actually no longer at the Brokery, but Dan Schaffler. It was the best transaction. Honestly, it's still in the top 3 of my experience. And I just loved him. He was fantastic. And so, okay, noted. We connected afterwards, and that was that. And then a few months had gone by, and I had signaled that I was starting to look for a new place to call home. And someone had connected with me about it and said, you really should consider the Brokery. And I said, wait a minute, the Brokery? Wait a minute. Yes, I did a cross sale with someone there, and I told this person who, and he said, oh, that's a buddy of mine. And I said, okay, well, I love him. He was fantastic. And he said, all right, we'll set it up right now. So literally we sat there together. He called Dan. He said, let's get a lunch on the books. And we did. We went for lunch. And Dan said, listen, I really think you need to meet Tucker and Oleg. I'll make an intro for you. And that was how it worked. And he did. And I met Oleg first and then went back in and met members of the team and Tucker. Yeah. And there was no question that was where I was going to go.
So who was there at the time?
At that time, we were still the Suits.
Okay.
At that time. So that was right when the Suits was transitioning, when the team, everything was shifting. I think actually we were the Suits for one whole week while I was there. And then it switched, pretty close after that. So it was me, the core people.
Yeah. Laura Sperber, Mariana.
Yes. Braden, Sam, Debbie Ponticus, Dallas. Dallas had come just a couple months before me. And
so were you in love with the transaction, the actual, like the Brokery brand, location, Oleg Tucker, all of it? Like what was it that brought you there?
Yeah. Well, I was in a place where my business was starting to grow, and the most senior agent at my former brokerage said to me, she pulled me aside and said, listen, I want you to start thinking about things you can delegate out, and you probably need to get some assistance before you even think you're ready. And so that was just kind of a nugget that I had held on to. And when I met with Tucker and Oleg and understood that I was going to have a graphic designer, a transaction coordinator, like this administrative support staff was going to marketing. Oh my God, it was just amazing. Those were all the things the transaction piece, not so much, but certainly the marketing and the graphic design. And then they explained to me how everything worked. And I was like, it was a no-brainer. Yeah. It was an absolute no-brainer. And that was, I was the agent that they would identify that works best for their model, right? I'm at a position in my business. I'm starting to grow. I need help to scale it. Got there, started coaching with Oleg, meeting these other full-time agents. Everybody was full-time, right? There was, in my former brokerage, there were only a couple of full-time people, mostly part-time. And for me, I wanted to be around a group of people who were all committed to their business full-time. And it was obvious when I went in to interview with the team. And that was really, I would say the tipping point was when they explained how those other services were going to be a part of the deal. It was amazing.
I don't know another brokerage who offers that.
I mean,
at that scale. I was on the phone with Jessica like right before you walked in, and she is so involved with like everything. I mean, it's like you guys have like a incredibly talented, very fast, embodies the brand. I mean, it's a very special thing, and I think you appreciate it. I think Tucker and Oleg appreciate it. I think some maybe the newer agents who kind of don't know any better, they don't understand if they were at another brokerage that wasn't like a full service, they wouldn't have those things because they're very unique. That's such a value add, and those two women they're
extraordinary,
insanely talented.
I could, it's kind of like when someone does their acceptance speech to thank all the people that have helped them. I could not thank Jessica. Jessica is the face. Like oh my goodness. I mean, her skills are extraordinary, and truly, like, to have that resource in-house, oh my goodness. I mean, that was the world I worked in before. She's a gift. She's a gift.
So let me just ask you this, because I don't think people understand. So as far as like when the contract's ready and you're going to like write a contract.
Yeah.
Agreement's settled, you guys are going to go.
Yep.
How much of that do you do?
I do all of it.
Okay.
I still manage my own files.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what about, for some agents, how deep does Jessica go on that?
So she's handling all of the design. She's handling all the marketing. She's handling all the social. She's handling all of that.
Oh, that's right. I was thinking she was a transaction coordinator, but she's not that.
Right. No.
She is licensed though, which is interesting. I didn't realize that, and then one day she said something about, my CE classes. I'm like, for what? She's like, real estate.
Yeah.
Like, wow. Yeah. I don't know if that was like a Oleg Tucker like requirement or just something she did on her own, because what we were talking about on the way here, because there was an agent, a colleague of yours, that needed some imagery, and we were just kind of going over what that piece was going to look like, and it was a market update mailer, and I said, do you write these, because they're very well done. And she said yes. And I'm like,
I actually thought that maybe Tucker did, or he had a company that did that. I didn't realize that she was doing that either.
It's her. And
it's super good. It's super classy.
And Hannah's a hell of a writer too. Like, she can design. Like, there's a lot of crossover between those two, for sure. I mean, Jessica's the classically trained, academic graphic designer. I'm like more like Hannah, but Hannah does beautiful work as well. And her writing is what just blows me away. And her ability to throw events that are so classy and yet still fun. Yeah, Hannah's amazing.
We are very, very fortunate.
We're just touting all the people.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I think they don't get a lot of note, nobody knows. They deserve it.
So much credit. Yes, they do.
Okay, can I ask you a hard-hitting question?
Please.
Okay, so you took a leadership role.
Yes.
And then now you don't do that anymore.
Yes.
Tell me why you took it and why you realized that it's not something you didn't want to do.
So what was interesting about kind of that evolution is that before the leadership role you're discussing, Oleg knew that I had a real love for coaching. And so he had me start coaching a couple of years ago, and had some of the newer agents were the ones that I coached. And as the business was growing and as they wanted to appoint new people into leadership, they had been really preparing me for that process, and it was just a natural next step. What I think was so fascinating, it was 18 months in that position, and I think what was so fascinating for me about it was that I learned so much about the other side of the business, in the sense of the mechanics of running a brokerage. I think that for me personally, you also, as a leader in that kind of capacity, you're also managing all independent contractors, right? No one is required to be there.
Right.
So when you're really looking at what that looks like, that's its own entity. It's not the same as being a manager or a leader in a corporate environment where everybody's got to show up, right? So that process of helping develop the team that was already in place and adding some others, I loved that part of it. I loved it. But as the business grows, what I realized, and what we collectively realized, that the skills that needed to help scale the new direction as we increase our agent capacity, that is its own job.
Right. And that's a COO role.
Yeah, and it's something that I think we all learned as we went. And frankly, for me personally, because I had a really challenging year with some personal things last year, I knew that my personal book of business was not what it had been, and that I needed to invest my time and energy back into that full speed ahead. Yeah. And so something had to go. And I think what's tricky is when you are someone that has kind of a hybrid experience, and I'm not 22 years old. Like, I clearly have been in other jobs and had other things that I've done. It can be a real slippery slope of getting distracted away from what the main focus needs to be, because that was the reality check. I need to be investing in my business and in my clients and in my database and in lead gen there. And if I commit, like I only would commit, which means I need to go full throttle, I knew this was going to suffer, and I knew that this wasn't the lucrative business decision, and that's where I had to make that choice. Yeah. And that was the hardest part, was that I love that team. And so that was hard for me to step down. I think I hung on longer because of them, and plus of my loyalty to Tucker and Oleg. I wanted to really, really wanted it to work. And then you just have to have that self-awareness. Sometimes you just have to say no to say yes. Yeah. And that's...
Well, it's hard to be a producing manager.
Correct.
In any business.
Fair.
Because there's so much stuff behind the scenes that people don't understand.
Right.
From the P&L side of things alone.
Right.
I mean, at this point, now you're paying for everything, right? Now you have to understand how every single bit of money coming in and out works. And
that's right.
Yeah, so it's like two jobs.
It is.
So... I commend the people that can do it. I don't know if there's a lot of people that actually are producing branch managers.
Right.
Even in our business, same thing. I mean, it's really difficult for someone to do. A lot of times if they do, they take a step back and just become a manager.
Correct. And I'm just not in a position at this juncture of my life to do that, and that's...
Well, that'll take away the passion of what you really got into it for and what you really like about it. Yeah. So... you can still coach.
That's right. Yeah. And I get to. And that's what's so fabulous about it.
Elevate. I think you should talk about Elevate right now.
Yeah. So Elevate came kind of as it's a coaching program that a colleague and I founded together. And it came on the heels of having we had mentees. Both of us had been mentoring new agents, and we noticed that when you bring someone in straight from real estate school, that there's obviously a learning curve. If they haven't had a corporate background or had a really disciplined schedule, we've got to figure all that out too. Mm-hmm. And just as they were getting ready to produce, our mentorship agreements were usually done, but they still needed assistance. They still needed that extra support. And we as mentors were still providing that. And so what we realized was, why don't we put them together? And let's continue to coach, because we are not coaching people to chase transactions. We are coaching people to be business owners, right? And to be relationship driven. And so hence Elevate Coaching was born, which is a huge testament to Tucker and Oleg to give that kind of opportunity to be able to have that ancillary business and to really be able to help develop the agents even further. We didn't feel right asking leadership to take that on. That didn't seem right. We knew we could do it, and they were very supportive of that. So that's been an incredible. That's to me the piece that.
So you have agents in. Have you thought about going outside of the broker, or is it all just people inside the brokery?
No, right now it's still all inside the brokery. There has been some dialogue about what that may look like if it were to go outside. But the way we have it structured right now, its home is in its best spot, which is inside the four walls of the agency. Yeah. And truly, as a new agent, if I'm a new agent and I know not only can I have a devoted mentor while I'm learning the business, but then as soon as I'm ready, now I get to transition into an internal coaching program that has my back, where I am literally being coached with people who are actively in their own business. That is an amazing place to be. Plus with all the things we offer. So it's definitely enhanced I would say it's enhanced that agent experience for those who've participated in it.
That's awesome. Tricia.
Yes.
You have on here that you'd like to lead this part of the conversation.
Oh, sorry. I was talking
We used to be really worried about having notes out and stuff. We're like, oh my God, now I'm like, just give me the notes, put on sticky notes, I want everything around. So.
Totally.
He had these really slick, like beautifully branded, like cards that you would see, like Jimmy Fallon had.
Yeah.
They were like to produce them for every single show.
Now we're like, more raw.
I like that.
We're a little more
organic.
You know
it's
what?
organic.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
It makes it easier.
Yeah.
And it also helps from not having to like, because a lot of times I would just go, oh man, I have a thought. I can't remember the thought. Now I just go, oh yeah, we're here. I think we're going to talk about that. And Tricia wants to talk about this.
That's right.
So we're going to
It's like prompts, right? Yeah, totally.
Exactly. It's just reminders.
Exactly.
Yeah. And thanks, Ryan, for letting me kind of
to
talk about this. So obviously we connected very early on when I started at the Brokery. And I mean, Ryan knew before I even met you that you were going to be, you're my type of person for sure. And so we have deeper conversations than maybe some others. And there was, even was this yesterday that we had? Okay, so this is just an example of the type of stuff we talk about. But this one was specifically relatable, I think, to the podcast conversation. So you are very giving. The Elevate program is, it's good business for you, but it is a very giving kind of environment. And it's cool to see all the Elevate students, if you will. They're tight, right? They kind of like bonded. It's almost like going to war together. So you are very other focused, right? You're always aware of, how so-and-so doing and checking in with everybody. I know that with that drive and desire to be that person, that does beg the question, does that eat into or not support the notion of being that like badass mega producer? I mean, is that something you even want to be? But how does that come into play? Because there aren't many people in leadership capacities like you. And I think there might be a reason for that. So sorry, it's a big question.
No, that's a beautiful question. I'm humbled by that question.
That was a sentence. I mean, a paragraph.
a run on. But I think you had to set the stage absolutely. For that, right?
So I think to your point, to me, the most important component, whether I'm working with agents or I'm working with clients, is the human capital piece. That is everything. People need to feel like they're seen and heard. And I feel that for me personally, it's about holding space for people to be their authentic selves. I say that because I also firmly believe we're not meant to do life alone. And this business can be very lonely if you're only focused on what you're doing and nobody else. So that's my philosophy. I mean, I really came into the business from that perspective. I also know that I stand on the shoulders of those who've come before me, to my first broker, who just poured into me. I couldn't have asked for a better mentor. I couldn't have asked for a better person to set the stage for what a business that is built on relationships and integrity looks like, right? So then I feel a responsibility, then I need to pay that forward. I know what an impact that had on me. But to the point about, does that take away? I've sat with that a lot. I understand that no one's going to, I don't think that as Tucker once said, he introduced me on a panel and he had a few of us.
I don't even know what she's going to say, but I'm already
totally
laughing.
No, but it like resonated with me in a way that was, that I took me back. And that was that he had introduced a panel one week. He's like, these are my killers. And then the next week I was on this panel, he goes, and these are my lovers. And he said, these are the people who just love on their people. And I realized that there's room for both. I only can hope that my business, what's more important to me than necessarily what production number I have next to my name, trust me, I like it to be good. But what that means, what that number translates to for me is that means I've served that many people. And so if I personally feel that what that has done for me is just keeps it in perspective. But No, I'm not going to step on other people to get what I want. I'm not a hustler in the sense of like, if I honor people's gut, I always say I don't argue with guts and souls. That means my clients, if they're not ready to go,
you're not going to push them.
I'm not going to push them. That's not my place. That's just not my place. And so some would say, you really need to get in there and just go for it. And my response is, I honor that other person. And I am confident that when the time is right, they're going to remember that.
Yeah. You're more service
I was just going to say, like, for me, it's not sales, it's service. And that's fundamentally what I believe. And I own the fact that because of that, that may not always mean that the numbers tally up the same way, but I know the quality of the people that I work with. I know the quality of those relationships, and I feel very blessed that the majority of my clients, if they weren't already friends, have become friends. I mean, there was even a client that wrote once that I had, that she had said, before I knew it, I was part of her family. And that was like the biggest compliment to me. Like, I'm helping you buy your home. Like, that is a sacred place to be. Yes, I only want to pour into that person. And I know that's a lot of touchy-feely, and I know that doesn't necessarily translate into what would maybe be called some sort of strategy, award-winning strategy, but that's how I put my head on the pillow at night.
Well, you have to honor yourself. Right?
Absolutely.
And so if you're out there trying to be that aggressive person, you're going to hate yourself.
Well,
and
not
you're
only
going to quit.
That, like, you have to be who, like, I always think to myself, how do I want to be approached? If someone is like calling me 14 times a day and is just telling me all the reasons why now's the time, I'm also in a place in my life where I know that that's motivated by them, not about me. That's not about me. That's about them. And so that is probably why I'm so uber sensitive when I approach people about what I do, is to lay the groundwork to, listen, I'm not a secret agent. People know what I do, right? They know. And that's what's been so beautiful about it, is that I've been able to serve,
Do you think that there's a place for improvement, though, on the sales side of things?
Always.
And you think that maybe you are so genuine and helpful and just sweet that you do, even times when you really kind of back away, there is an opportunity for both of you to be happy with. Maybe they need a little nudge.
That's right.
And are you good at that part? Do you know when that's that time, or do you think you could be coached to be better at that?
Well, first of all, I think I can always be coached to be better, because I don't think it's ever done. So that's like rule number one, and which is why I have a coach. Yeah. And I believe strongly in that. But to your point, yes. And I think over the years I've gotten much better. Plus, it comes with confidence and experience, right? It comes with time to understand what that looks like. Totally. Yes, I'm able to, if you will, put my foot down when it's necessary and be able to say, listen, like, let me create, let me lay it out for you, right? And whether they choose to do it or not is different. But in terms of asking for business, in terms of that sense of being more demonstrative about that has been a place that, I'm coached a lot to continue to have sincerity meet business, right? Because we are running a business at the end of the day. And it's not to say I haven't sold anything. It's just that sense of like, I understand that I've learned, especially with what I've been through over the past couple of years, that I realized that for me, the hustle mentality of never stopping was actually causing me to burn out. And what I needed to find was this kind of grace within myself to say, I am running a business, but I am also a human being, and I'm a mom and a wife and all these other things. Let me find a way to be able to lean into my own gut, my own instinct, and build from there. And that's been a much better place to be in than the constant state of anxiety-ridden fight or flight that we sometimes go through, right? I mean, it's real. It's real.
Very.
I tend to find that a lot of really hardcore salespeople that are very, very successful are also socially unaware. And they take things to levels that make most people cringe, but society makes it okay to tout them as great salespeople. And whatever, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it's like, I mean, there's so many sales skills and books and seminars and workshops and stuff to teach you how to just, when they say this, you say this, and you say this, and it's just like, I don't want to say that. I don't want to do that stuff. Like,
Right.
and I feel like it's cringy to me. But you
Yeah.
can be very, very successful. Some of the people that I find that are most successful in this town in real estate are not over salesy.
Yeah.
They're just really good at building relationships and having massive spheres.
Yes.
And they're everywhere,
Yes.
and people love them, and they do a good job, and they're great when cross sales.
Yep.
So other agents like them.
That's right.
And that's which helps, right?
Of course it does.
So you got to play nice in the sandbox, and so I mean it is what it is, right? There's different philosophies and on how it works. I mean, I wouldn't say Tucker's an overly hardcore sales guy.
No.
Oleg definitely is a little bit more of a sales
guy, but he's not cringy-ish.
No,
but
not
he has
at all.
a huge heart, and I think that's
he has both things, which is
he
really
really
good.
does. He really and I've learned a great deal from him
Yeah.
because of that.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that there's that sense of learning how to lean into what you know to be authentic for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start to sort out, like, if it makes you cringe, is it because I'm just uncomfortable, or is it because it's not in alignment with who I am? And that's where I've had to in coaching to kind of separate it out. It's like, okay, well, that I can do so long as the motivation behind it is full of integrity, right? That's my thing. As long as I'm leading with that, then I'll get uncomfortable to do what's best, because at the end of the day, it has to be best for the client.
Right. And like you said, it comes with that bats. You do it enough, you've seen the same scenario enough times, you're like, okay, I already know this is I've already done this.
Correct.
So I'm going to tell you why you're going to do what I say.
Right.
I need to pipe in here.
Yeah.
One thing that I think we haven't necessarily shared is you are a successful agent. We're talking about all the warm fuzzies and maybe, and production numbers not being the most important, but you are like a hell of a producer. So that needed to be said.
Oh, thank you for that. Thank you. I think, but I think what you asked earlier was on the heels of a discussion after having, last year I had a life-threatening experience, and that set me back for 6 months. And when you take a salesperson out of the field for 6 months, you're going to feel it in your business.
For sure.
I was blessed that I still was able to close deals during that time and still get back into the swing. But to your point, if you just looked at my number from last year, someone would say, oh, sorry, sweetie, like what I did from the year before. And what I realized was that was the best thing that could have happened to me, right? It was the best lesson to learn, which was honestly to relax. You learn if taking someone out of the field or not being able to do your income producing, your lead generation activities for 6 months, and you still closed, you still did work, meant that I was doing the right things beforehand. And once I could do the right things again, I knew I could trust it's going to be okay. And that was a huge lesson to learn. Kind of wiped out that feeling of we're just throwing spaghetti on the wall. Like, clearly there's a process and a system in place because it works. And that's what we're really working on in coaching with other agents, is know what you need to do and just keep doing it. And don't quit. Just keep going. Don't quit. And so thank you for saying that, but that is why we had that conversation, because it was every year was always growing, doubling, in fact, and then all of a sudden last year it was
6
tough.
months out is pretty brutal, and also the market was changing too.
It was.
So.
By the time I was really the market had already. It was June. I was back in the game in June, and
when it turned to
right. I mean
shit.
But then to see that business pick back up, and to be able to see all of that now having a great start to the year, that comes from I never stopped being in front of my clients, even though it was in a limited capacity, and that just underscored what's most important.
So had that happened to you, obviously it was an unforeseen medical issue. Had you not been that person who fosters relationships, you might be screwed right now, right?
Absolutely.
So, like, the longevity of your career it's those seeds you planted years ago got you through that 6 month gap.
Absolutely, they did.
And if you'd been all about sales, you probably would be starting over, like when you came back, right? You would have lost all that momentum. But people they know that you have their best. And, we were all worried about you. So it wasn't, I know you had people that were willing to pitch in with whatever you needed, right?
Absolutely. Therein lies, again, we're not meant to do life alone. Absolutely.
100%.
There you go. We've just unpacked a lot of stuff here.
I knew this was going to
This
be
is like a Channel 8. So.
Yeah, I knew this. I knew this was going to go in this direction, which is nice.
We're over an hour right now, so
we're
gonna kind of move towards the end here. But I think it's good that we end on one of the things that is a huge aspect of your success, in that not only the building relationship stuff, but you are really good at social media. And so for people, I'm sure you teach this to your students. You're gonna.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't yet, but
no, we do.
You do.
I know. It's so true. You don't want to call them like coachees, right? It's like, but students feels funny. But yeah, you're right. No, that's true.
How about people in your coaching program?
There we go. Yes.
I just did that.
Nicely.
So talk to us about the social media and like what, like kind of how you got good at it and comfortable with it, and because Trisha needs to learn how to do it.
Okay.
She knows how to do it.
I hope that face. I hope that face was recorded though, because that was classic. That was a classic.
Go to her Instagram
brother
page.
Sister. That was a brother sister thing. Yeah. No. For sure. I mean,
she's amazing at creating content for other people.
Oh my God. Yes.
But
absolutely.
But not like your stuff as far as like you're forward facing.
Yeah. Well, I think. Listen, forward facing social media. I never changed my accounts. So I say that because I obviously did not start my Instagram because I was a real estate agent. I was this woman who had been connected with people for 10 years on social, and they saw my child grow. They saw my life in New York City. They saw all those things. And then I introduced them to this whole new chapter, which was a real estate business that I was so proud to build. And I'm very transparent. I know, and the reason I am is because I understand fundamentally that we compare ourselves all the time on social media. You go on social media, you see the highlight reel. I mean, we've talked about this a lot just in general terms. And that comparison-itis, if you will, I always wanted to make sure people knew the story about what was going on behind the scenes. And so I show things like ugly houses. I show things like me falling down. I show things like this was a really tough day. I show when I'm like the feral realtor who's like in my robe in my house with my hair standing up, because that is the reality.
Yeah.
And so but that came before real estate. It was more about, I never wanted to be that person who all of a sudden, we've all had those friends, they start a new business and it's like all of a sudden they're no longer the same person. It's just it's a storefront. And I didn't want to do that for two reasons. One, I want people to get to know me. I don't want them to think that I'm just this sales robot person. And the other piece was they're trusting me with something that's very vulnerable for them. Yeah. Buying a home, exposing your financials, exposing what your needs are, exposing that, you know what, life isn't so great behind the scenes. We need a bigger house. We need to see if we can save our marriage. I hear the stories, so they need to know that I'm just as transparent about that in a way that builds trust.
Right.
You know, it's that know, like, and trust factor. And I also have been through too much to act as though life is perfect. Right. I just can't do that. It's so inauthentic and it's not perfect. And I'm perfectly imperfect. And so I feel like that's part of that transparency. Yeah, I try to be polished when I can. I didn't show up feral today. You know, like, I mean, I'm trying. But at the same time, we would have this same conversation if we were sitting at my table in my house. Yeah. And I was in my Barney, robe and like looked ridiculous. Like, if you called me today and said I'm coming over, I'd be like, yeah, let's go. And we'd have food and we'd sit and talk, right? Yeah. That's just the way that I want people to feel that seamless connection. And it's interesting, those leads that have come through on social media where I've never met them before, and it's through social.
Really?
Yeah,
that's
they've
awesome.
said, like, I am who I say I am, and I would only hope so, right? I would only hope, because I think that we're doing ourselves a disservice if we don't let the life come into. Yeah.
There's one more thing that I think you need to address with her is how we work together, right? I mean, we love you as a team, right? From like many, many layers. Why, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Yeah. Why us? I mean, you got a lot of lender options. Like, why do you choose to work with us? I mean, we're definitely on the short list, right? At the top of the short list, from what I understand.
Yes.
And why? Why is that?
Well, first of all, the integrity of the process. The integrity of the process is what I can trust to know that my clients are going to be served with the utmost integrity. I also know that when you all call and say, this one's good to go, great pre-qual, we're in a good spot, we've got this, that, and the other, I can trust. And I go out and then can advocate for my client in the best way possible because I fully understand that you have taken such good care of them and they trust you. The trust is, to me, it's trust and integrity. Not to mention, you know, a lot of people can lead with that, but we've had some complicated deals.
Not long ago.
No, exactly. And I have seen that regardless of someone's price point, regardless of, you treat everyone with the utmost respect and care. And so for me, that's a no-brainer. I mean, I know when I recommend someone, I need to put my head on the pillow at night and have not a shadow of a doubt that they're going to be taken care of, because that is a reflection of my referral to my client. And I can say without fear of contradiction that that's how we roll. And then I look at the systems, the processes, the communication.
The people.
Well, that is just a given. I mean, but it's really nice. It's really nice to love the people that you work with and know that they do an outstanding job. Because sometimes we can love people, right? But we're like, I don't know, that's going to go through.
Yeah.
That's not the case. I just feel so blessed and it's every single person on the team. I mean, truly, that's why. And to me, it really is a partnership.
Yeah, I love that. It's a good question, Trisha. We
Thanks,
might get you on camera one of these days.
Nice. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was a great ending to our first episode of the year 2023.
Amazing.
We ran into the storm today, but we're through it.
That's nice.
That's why.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Did mention that is the first time we've seen the sign on camera. That's kind of exciting.
It's fabulous.
It is pretty cool.
I got
right?
that from somebody in Turkey.
Are you serious?
Off Etsy.
And he was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Turkey,
That
what's
is
up?
amazing.
Jupiter. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I promised him this week that I would send a photo of it lit.
Oh, it's fabulous.
He's very excited to see it on the wall.
That's
Cool.
incredible.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate it. Glad
Thank
we
you for
finally got
having
on.
me.
Absolutely.
What a treat. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, thanks, Trey. Thanks, Trisha. Good job today, Trish.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
She did great.
She did awesome.
Is that
She
out of
always
the
does.
ordinary?
She always does.
Always.
And again, please, everybody, go on to our YouTube page, like and subscribe, and all our social media. Please comment, share with all your friends, especially our guests. Please, when this comes out,
Yeah,
share it with all your friends.
I will.
And of all your friends, share it.
Okay, perfect.
So we're trying to build up our fan base here. So
Love it.
again, thank you to VIP, thank you Bison Ventures, and thank you to Muscular Moving Men. Our boys over there are great. Hey,
They are
thanks, Trey.
awesome.
Nice.
And thank you guys. We're out.